Good Friday and Easter, a historical and theological examination by Jihad Zinat. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The observance of Good Friday and Easter, as practiced today, is not found as a formal institution in the teachings of Jesus, Isa, or the earlier prophets. Rather, these observances developed over time through interpretation, tradition, and institutional decisions made generations after the original events. It is important to clarify from the outset that the following narrative reflects what Christians believe occurred, while the Islamic position differs and does not accept the crucifixion in the same manner. In the biblical narrative, time was reckoned from evening to evening, meaning a new day began at sunset. The Gospels describe Jesus being crucified on what is called the Day of Preparation, the day before the Sabbath. The Sabbath in Jewish law begins at sunset on what we now call Friday and continues until sunset on Saturday. According to the Christian account, the body of Jesus was removed from the cross before sunset and placed into a tomb. From an Islamic perspective, however, it is held that Jesus was not crucified, but rather it was made to appear so, and God raised him. There is internal debate within Christian scholarship regarding the exact day of what they believe to be the crucifixion. While the traditional position identifies Friday as the day, some interpretations argue that the Sabbath referenced was a high annual Sabbath connected to Passover, not the regular weekly Sabbath. This has led to alternative theories, suggesting the event may have occurred on what we now call Thursday. According to the Christian narrative, the tomb was later found empty on the first day of the week, known today as Sunday. In contrast, Islam does not base its belief on this sequence of events. The term Good Friday itself did not originate at the time of Jesus. It emerged centuries later, likely in medieval England. Some scholars suggest it may have originally meant God's Friday, while others interpret good to mean holy. Regardless of its linguistic origin, it reflects a later naming tradition rather than a term used by any prophet. Early followers of Jesus were from the children of Israel and initially remained within the framework of existing religious practice. However, over time, a separation occurred. After the First Council of Nicaea, the celebration of Easter was standardized as the first Sunday after the full moon following the spring equinox. This formal separation from Passover marked a shift away from the earlier prophetic tradition tied to the calendar of the children of Israel. In addition, the weekly day of worship transitioned. The Sabbath, originally observed on Saturday, as established in earlier Revelation, was gradually replaced in practice by Sunday gatherings among Christians based on their belief that this was the day of resurrection. This shift developed over the first few centuries and was reinforced by church authorities rather than being explicitly commanded by any prophet. The Gospels also describe tension between Jesus and certain religious leaders of his time. One notable account describes Jesus overturning tables in the temple and condemning corrupt practices, stating that a place of worship had been turned into a marketplace. While some from the children of Israel followed him, the majority did not accept him as the Messiah, which contributed to the eventual divergence between communities. From an Islamic perspective, all prophets, including Jesus, Isa, Moses, and Abraham, called to the worship of one God without partners. None of them introduced a new religion by name, but rather conveyed submission to God. The final and complete articulation of this message was delivered by Muhammad, who explicitly conveyed Islam as a complete and preserved way of life. Over time, cultural elements became attached to Easter, including symbols such as eggs and rabbits, which historically existed as representations of fertility and seasonal renewal in pre-Christian societies. These elements were later incorporated into popular celebration, further reflecting how practices evolved beyond the original prophetic teachings. In conclusion, while Good Friday and Easter are central to Christian observance today, their current forms reflect centuries of development. When examined historically and compared with the consistent message of the prophets and clarified through the Islamic position, these practices illustrate a transition from original revelation to later institutional and cultural traditions.